What's up, sons? It's Blind Ride with Son of a Tech once again, and today I want to do another talking head video. Today I want to talk about, well, I guess the general communities surrounding cryptocurrencies and some of the issues that I see popping up. I am not innocent in any of this, so I want to make that clear, and I want to bring it up because I want to kind of reshape the way that we communicate with each other. And that is what today's video is about. So welcome back, everyone. I want to make it clear that I am not going to basically bring up any particular post, any particular individual's name, or any particular project name. I think from what I can see right now, as far as what I'm going to discuss here and the way people are treating each other is pretty much universal across the board between different cryptocurrency projects, between different community members within those projects, and of course, between all of the cryptocurrency YouTubers, etc. I'll be the first one to basically admit that I have succumbed to all of this basically poor behavior myself in the past. Some of it I think is intentionally, at least when I do it. I try to do it as a joke. I find some of the things like saying the R word and etc., the F words, whatever they are, as a joke, but that doesn't always translate also in a text. And I think maybe I need to change that a little bit too, depending on the situation. Like if it's clear everybody is joking, I think it's fine. If I'm just making a quick, like obviously like shit post, I think it's fine. I think that's funny if I'm not adding anybody, that sort of thing. Most recently, I think surrounding the issues that Pyron had, along with announcements from Carlson, and then obviously the issues that Radiant's been having, and so on and so forth. I'm getting like all of these DMs from different people being like, well, so-and-so was being rude, and so-and-so said this, and here's screenshots, and talk about it on the channel. I am not going to bring up your individual screenshots on the channel. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to call out individuals. And I think that if you are doing that sort of thing, and I'm going to look at you in the eye, right, and you're trying to get me to like call people out, you're also a part of the problem, whether you realize it or not. Now, we are in a depressed market. That means that people's emotions are running high, their pocketbooks are not as full as they typically are, and the stress levels are extremely high too. And I think that that is causing a lot of this. So when you are speaking with people, I think you need to take that into account so that you can have the proper amount of empathy when discussing different topics. This doesn't mean, and I want to make this very clear, this doesn't mean that if you see an issue, you don't bring the issue up, but you also don't have to be like, oh, you're just a terrible person, or along with it, right? Like you don't have to do that with like the, hey, here's the issue that I see, because obviously it's going to bring up problems. Now, I am in a plethora of discords. I could care less if Pyron Hash doesn't like Carlson, or Radiant doesn't like kaspa, or kaspa doesn't like Kadena. I don't care. My job is to see what's going on. So if you're going to come at me and like try to make me a part of your coin community, that's not going to happen. I'll let you know that right off the bat. I've always approached this particular job, I suppose, as a YouTuber and a content creator surrounding cryptocurrency a lot closer to the way I would approach being a journalist, and a classical journalist, and we'll discuss that a little bit too, and not basically a participant within communities. I basically denounce all cryptocurrency communities. I think I've tried to make that extremely clear, but that also doesn't mean that I don't like the communities or the people within the communities, okay? So I'm going to try to work with people, connect, mining developers with different projects that are maybe looking for them, connect pool operators to different projects as well. I like to connect even customers to basically any sort of mining hardware companies that I think will actually ship you the project or the project or the miner reliably. I mean, that's why I will bring up like Coastal actually shipping units, BT miner shipping units, and so on. There are different types of YouTube channels you should be aware of too. When I talk about, I think on Twitter, journalistic ethics and the way that should be approached, etc., you need to take into account that the entire landscape for media has changed. Your traditional journalistic medium has gone the way of the dinosaur. Everything has shifted to influencers. And yes, technically influencers are not journalists, so they're not beholden to journalistic ethics. Unfortunately, a couple decades ago, all of the journalists lost their ethics as well. So you couldn't even say that if journalists were in their place, it would be different. And this is actually, quite funnily enough, a part of the decentralization problem of the internet, right? Like originally we had, a very centralized medium of exchange of information that got decentralized with the internet. It created this new medium, and a lot of the people coming into the new medium do not have formal training in any philosophy, journalism, etc., right? So, and I know this just because I went to college for journalism. So I took, and this was in the early 2000s. Yes, I'm that old. And so one of the big classes that you had to take was journalistic ethics. So that always pops into my head. And one of the big things that pops up with journalism ethics is not to accept product. If you do, to ship it back. So if you have a review unit for X video game, X piece of mining hardware, whatever it may be, you would ideally not mine to your own wallet. You would mine to a generic wallet for the testing. You would then essentially send that unit back. And the way around this, if you are let's say if we had traditional journalists within the miner review industry, if you wanted to, like, let's say you still want to run a mining farm, that's fine. But you do have to purchase those units. And in op-eds, like opinion articles, you can as well even talk about your experience with the units you've purchased and what you think is better or not and why, with the clear communication that is your opinion on that based off of your experience, etc. So these are the things that kind of I think come up when I'm talking about it that I notice as an issue, but I also am not going to be like, oh, so and so is doing it wrong or whatever. You also have to take into account that some people set up YouTube channels to sell their product specifically. So it's a completely different design. We have a medium that could follow journalistic ethics, but also could be basically a PR move by a company, right? You go watch Coastal Crypto's videos, and I know they won't be offended here because I know they understand what I'm saying. They create a YouTube channel to promote their product, right? And that's what they do. It just needs to be clear that is the difference between, maybe somebody that is reviewing hardware and providing you an affiliate code for which they get a kickback to, basically compared to an actual company that is shipping you product. Okay. So this is kind of the overarching theme as far as the differences between influencers and what I would consider to be traditional journalists, how that has changed as we've decentralized the medium of exchange of information, which is, I think at the end of the day, also kind of a good point when we are right off the heels of talking about decentralization, because everything that happens as a result of decentralization is not always a good thing. We have things like economies of scale to talk about, etc. What I do want you to think about, though, is that if you're in a particular coin community, let's say it's coin A, and you really don't like coin B or whatever, you have to take into account that everything you say about that other coin has to be taken with a grain of salt by anyone that's trying to report on it truly and accurately, right? And so that is another problem I run into, is that it's very hard to disseminate information between individuals when I know they have a existing bias towards A, B, or C project, and they may have correct issues that they're presenting, but the way in which they present them means that that never gets communicated properly to the coin that may need to resolve that issue. At the end of the day, I also want you guys to remember that I really, truly, honestly believe this. Most people have good intentions. They typically just don't have the education in all the aspects. You're also talking about, when we're talking about cryptocurrency, there are multiple skills that need to be learned, whether it's coding or administration or infrastructure. And just in infrastructure, you could talk about, purely just the actual miners themselves, or you could be talking about big power, all of these types of things that are going to come into play. And it is impossible for everybody to be an expert at all things, even within just the cryptocurrency space. Okay. So you might say something that other individuals don't even understand as well, and you need to figure out how to communicate that properly. Otherwise, it's just falling on deaf ears, right? Like at the end of the day, that's the way it's going to be. What I don't like seeing is essentially this kind of infighting within the cryptocurrency space, especially the cryptocurrency mining space, and how that has kind of eroded, I think, the community as a whole, even in each like individual Discord that I see and so on. The goal should be learning about all of the projects as much as you can and making the best decision that you can from that aspect. Once again, like I said, I don't like communities for cryptocurrency. I think that breeds negativity towards the rest of the industry. And I think that is a very dangerous path to be on, because also if you're stuck in a single asset and you're not diversified so hard that you're talking crap about other cryptocurrency projects, you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage as well, because you need to be diversified. And I think that in the past, I haven't responded as well to people that are acting in this manner, to where I will get very frustrated with them and say what I think. And so for that, I do apologize if it did come across as like malicious. It's not what I'm trying to do, but I also want to make it very clear that I don't find that behavior acceptable either. And I think that we can all do a little bit better. Once again, at the end of the day, I think everybody has good intentions. Like, I think in general, a coin dev has the intention of creating a project that is going to have longevity and be successful, because that's in their best financial interest anyways, right? I think that a miner wants a project to be successful because that's in their best interest financially anyways. Okay. I think a holder wants the project to be successful because guess what? It is in their best interest financially anyways. So the good intentions are driven, yes, by financial prosperity. Maybe you could say, oh, and that's bad. And you can, all right, fine. But you have to admit that is still the case. So when I see even that, right, we have a broader spectrum. We have like let's say it's not an individual coin. We have the miners, the holders, and then we have the devs of the coin, devs of the mining software, devs of the mining pools, devs of the firmware. All of these different components and individuals working within the space, they all have the same end goal to a certain degree. Now, the issue can be, obviously, like we've seen in the past, is that the financial incentive outweighs the incentive for longevity. So short-term financial gains outweighs the incentive for long-term success of a project. And that's when you end up with something like a rug pull, or even in some particular cases, right, you might end up with a dev fund that gets printed out of thin air, and that's going to obviously rub people the wrong way. It doesn't mean that project is going to be a rug pull necessarily. It just means that they're incentivized to obviously be financially successful at the very least. I think overall, and this is just my humble opinion, that you should, as a developer for a cryptocurrency, maybe like not do developer funds. And I know that there's an argument there that developers need to get paid. But as we've seen in the past, if you have a successful fair launch project, you already have an early mover advantage as a developer. So you should have a bag that, if you believe in the project you're working on, should be large enough for you to be financially compensated. That would be the ideal world. I realize we don't live in the ideal world. That is just kind of a little tangent there as far as that's concerned. I've gone off on a couple tangents here. Hopefully you guys are getting what I'm putting down though, right? Like, people just look at each individual that you're discussing things with. Assume that they have good intentions off the bat unless they prove to you differently, right? That doesn't mean give them money or do something retarded, okay? It just means assume that they have good intentions off the bat, as opposed to assuming that they have ill intentions off the bat. And that is something I can do better as well, right? I think is kind of my point at the end of the day. I do want to do a video talking about the shift in, mediums or of communication of information between individuals, how that has shifted, the way media is presented to people, the influence of financial incentives for both creators as well as the viewers and everybody else involved. I think that it's important to explain that maybe more depth. So let me know if you're interested in that. It's something that I'm passionate about because, like I said, that's what I went to college for, which is kind of funny. I ended up doing YouTube at the end of the day. I am a college dropout as well. The only degree I have is associates in automotive engineering at the end of the day, so I could get a job to work and pay for the kiddos. That's kind of how that went. But I did go for 3 years to journalism school, so I did learn a lot in that medium. I found it very interesting. I really like philosophy, if you can't tell, so I'm kind of into that stuff. Give you some insights on me. I'm not going to respond to individuals that are trying to get me to, talk against particular projects or individuals. If I have sufficient evidence that there is something like a rug pull, or there is something that is going to screw over the audience or the participants, and is evidence that I feel is unquestionable, that will be talked about on the channel. So don't worry about that. And if a project does something really good, regardless of the project, I will mention that as well, right? Like, we have projects like Carlson Hash moving to Ironfish or Fish Hash, which is really cool right now, most recently. And without Ironfish, Carlson wouldn't have Fish Hash, even though it is Fish Hash Plus or whatever it's called. But so if you're just a fan of Ironfish or just a fan of Carlson, you need to take into account all of these things build up cryptocurrency as a whole, okay? And some projects have to walk so that others can run. And keep that in mind. Thanks for watching. I will see you next Tuesday.